Hi, everyone. I wanted to take a few minutes to be with you and focus with you around true boundaries that are moving according to deep feminine essence and that are anchored in a presence so that they bring you back to life, so that they don't separate you from life. They don't become rigid and crystallized and something you get exhausted trying to figure out or defend at all times, so that your boundaries don't end up and their subsequent violations don't make you feel bitter or entitled. Boundaries, containment, and dominion is meant to bring you into the queen, right? To put you at ease, to sit you down in a place of self knowing and empowerment and presence with yourself that feels regal and dignified, and that transmits as regal and dignified and unfuckable in a way. Nobody wants to mess with that because they inherently want to respect that, because it's a respectable and very evocative poise, right? But how do you do that? What are some keys to having boundaries that really evoke respect rather than conflict, and that feel true to you and that keep you living, that create more life for you rather than dissipating your life and dissipating your sense of what's right and wrong and your place in the world? So I have three things to share of the many things that could be shared. One is that boundaries, deep feminine boundaries, are alive. They're not rigid, they're not conceptual, and they can't be broken in that way. There's a flexibility, not a passivity, but a flexibility and a living quality to true boundaries. They are alive so that as you are alive and evolving and moments are evolving, your boundaries can shift and reflect the actual truth that is you in whatever that moment is. So when you are striving to find boundaries, to speak your truth, pay attention to whether or not you're getting into rigid habits of this is who I am, these are my boundaries, versus cultivating, spending time, gathering self-intimacy and a kind of untamed ability to just say what's true for you, to know what's the yes and what's the no in the moment without filtration and without hesitation. That's self-intimacy that leads to that, so that these boundaries are living and you can be living inside of them rather than trapped inside of them or busy defending them, busy making sure they're patched and conceptual and don't ever fall, right? A second piece around boundaries that are deep feminine in that way, I mean just nourishing to you, is that they're semi-permeable. One of the difficulties with boundaries is that most of the boundaries we're setting are with people that we love, people that are close to us often, right? So many of them. And the intimacy is a huge realm for that. So is parenthood. There's a lot of familial and lovership boundaries that have to be negotiated. And what gets tricky is that even if certain behaviors or aspects of these people in your life need to be put in a certain place, or you need to protect, or you need to create a boundary against some kind of behavior or some kind of intrusion, still you love them, you have love for them. So we often try to find these boundaries that are all one or all the other. Either we blast open to the love and just try to kind of, oh, well, I love you, so let me see if I can just get past all those things and keep myself wide open, or your behavior is so awful, I'm going to close down, my boundary is complete, get out of my life and my world, right? Usually we end up violating those boundaries ourselves because we love that person. There's a love that will insist on being honored and expressed just because it's a part of us. So even just as you're creating boundaries, finding a visualization of a semi-permeable one. What would it be? What would it look like to allow the light of their love, to allow the nectar of the love that you share to pass back and forth between you, while still creating almost like a filtration system that doesn't allow toxic behavior or, diminishing, kind of detrimental choices on either one of your parts to keep being a part of the relationship. So a semi-permeable boundary where what wants to come in, what nourishes you, can still get in. And what it nourishes you to give can still be given. But within that, there's an intelligence. And you can allow your boundary in this way to have its own intelligence, to sift for you, to start finding your trust in your own kind of natural living boundary that's here to keep you contained and protected anyway. Start trusting that and leaning into it and listening, letting there be a more of a filtration with the outside world and with circumstance and with people, rather than trying to find these epic, clarities, these one-word clarities that never really suffice because we are complex beings. The third thing that I would say, I would love to highlight about a deep feminine boundary is that boundaries, in a very special way, in a very important and powerful way, are meant to keep you in rather than to keep others out. And what I mean by that is a boundary is a container. Boundaries are containment. And we often come to boundaries saying, I want to create this boundary to keep this out, to keep this toxic thing out, this person out, this whatever out. But if you can make a shift from your focus on others, your focus on the toxic behavior, your focus on this, your focus on that, this other person, and shift it to a focus on how can I keep myself in, meaning I'm not trapping yourself in, but holding, containing your energy, containing your life force, containing your own nourishment so that it cycles back into you, containing what feels good. So that when you make choices and when you're speaking to others, you don't have to say things like, well, I'm not going to go with you because you are toxic and you irritate me and you never really listen to me when I'm talking, right? It becomes all about them. This boundary is about them and their behavior. Because it's about keeping that out, putting it in its place. If you let yourself consider your boundaries as something that is keeping you in, as in consolidating you, bringing you into greater intimacy with yourself, you might just say, I don't think I'm going to go there because I want to be deeply heard and I want to deeply listen to myself right now. This is what would nourish me. So you're letting your boundaries turn you towards what will keep you in, hold you, envelop you, keep the good of you in. So it becomes less about other people, and then as you become less about making boundaries that keep other people out, they might be the exact same looking boundaries, but when you make it about, I want to care for myself, I want to nourish myself, it brings a lot less conflict and a lot less of that. People fight it a lot less and get hurt, and they wiggle it with it a lot less if they don't feel like you're pushing them out, if you're turning towards yourself rather than turning away from them. So those are a few thoughts that I've had, and I've asked Jasmine, who mentors with her mystery school, to offer a free webinar this week, or in 2 weeks from now actually, all about going deeper into this. Boundaries that bring you back to life. What is that? And specifically for you, for each of you, in the specifics of your life, how can you create those so that you're happier and so that you do feel more and more of this gathering of your own power and gathering of your own authenticity inside of yourself that will be reflected by the way that people relate to you in your world. So feel free to join for that. She'll be able to answer any questions that have come up with this tiny little blurb that I've given. And as you navigate boundaries, especially as you navigate them from a place of really holding sovereignty in yourself, be gentle. It is not easy, and it is an ever-evolving learning process, especially if you choose to have boundaries and a life that is regal and alive, rather than conceptual and rigid and a little breakable, a little stale, right? So here's to your life, and to holding it in, and to erupting and filling completely with the magic and mystery that you are. Blessed be.